we can just, this is the organic conversation time where we talk, where we talk about things normally, like people do.
Yes, I am a person, and I know how to do that.
You're a communications guy.
That's true.
You do know how to do it.
I can facilitate good conversation. It's one of my many skills. Some say that communication is the most skilled of all fields.
Really?
I've heard that said, yeah.
Wow. Who said that? Another communications person?
It was me, actually. I said that. I manifested it.
You're a communications guy. That makes sense.
Yeah. All right, well, should we intro this thing?
Let's do it.
Okay. What's up, everybody? My name is Cameron Justice. I'm the host of the college years. Just kidding, guys. It was me, Aidan, all along. Today, we're switching it up a bit. I'm hosting. Cam will be my guest. We all knew it was a matter of time before I replaced Cam, and it just happened a little earlier than we expected. So, yeah. I guess we'll start. We'll play a game that I'm not even going to pretend like I came up with this concept. But it's called True Confessions, if you've seen Jimmy Fallon do it. The idea is that Cam has 2 sheets of paper in front of him, one of which is a true crazy story from his college experience, one of which is something completely made up. He's going to, I guess, shuffle those around and then pick one at random. And then I get to ask questions for a minute to try to guess if it's a real story or not. And he has to play it off like it's real as best as possible. And then we'll find out at the end if it was real. Did I do that justice explaining?
Yes, we are set. Yeah, so if you're new to this, my name's Cam, former host. I'm passing the torch, and there's nobody that I'd rather pass the torch to than Aidan. So, yeah, without further ado, I wrote this on the same sheet, so I'm just going to kind of do one of these, and I'm going to you tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay. I pointed kind of in the middle of the two, but I'm going to go with this one. So, all right. The story is, I was at an event where Michael Vick was speaking, and he was 3 rows in front of me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's Michael Vick. And I went to go take a picture of him. It was in a dark space, and the flash was on, and his security guards all turned around and gave me really dirty looks.
Okay. What was the event?
It was at a church, and Michael Vick was the keynote speaker of all people. And he was...
You don't go to church.
But it was a church event. I wasn't like going to church. It was an event that the church was holding, and Michael Vick was speaking there.
What was the event?
Wait, did we put a minute on the clock? I don't want to get interrogated for 45 minutes.
I'd say we've gone for probably a solid 20 seconds.
Okay, all right. So the event, is that what you asked me? What was the event?
Yeah. Yes.
So they did like this. The church did like this series that was about like a bunch of parts of the Bible, I guess. I don't really know. But they were themed a certain way. And so like Michael Vick's was like redemption. Like I don't know what you know about Michael Vick, but he's kind of been through it. So it's like about redemption and all of these things. So he talked about his experiences in the dogfighting industry.
Okay.
That's such an odd way to frame that.
I don't know. I'm very skeptical of this so far. It seems like a ridiculous situation. But I'll ask like 2 more questions.
Okay. Shoot.
So how did you know he was Michael Vick if he was like, his back was, you said he was 3 rows in front of you, but then you said he was the speaker.
So get this. They marketed it and said, hey, Michael Vick is coming to speak. You should show up. And then he walked in the doors and I said, that's Michael Vick. I haven't lived under a rock for the past 15 years. And he showed up and I said, that's Michael Vick. Because he was the only black person besides me in there.
Okay. All right. I think the minute is up.
Okay.
I'm gonna say this isn't true because the story changed from him being 3 rows in front of you to him being the keynote speaker.
Well, it actually is true.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So the reason he was a few rows in front of me is because the pastor or whoever it was had to introduce him. He walked in, he sat down, and then they did some like worship stuff, and so he was standing there a couple rows in front of me. Here, I got to pull up the picture. Um, yeah, because there's like, you know, those live photos that phones do now in the 21st century. So it's funny. The first picture I took of him is a live photo, and you can tell the flash was on because the picture happens, and then I like go like this because I'm like, oh shoot, the flash is on. So let me pull this real quick. That is Michael David Vick. I don't know if that's his middle name or not, but that's also his security guard right there. That,
Oh my gosh, that guy's massive.
yeah, he's huge, and he looked at me as if he was going to fight me, so that's not good. Yeah, so that was true.
Interesting. Okay. Okay, cool. Well, the more you know about Cam, I guess we'll get into some of the more college-related questions.
For sure.
As that is what this podcast is about. It's called the College Years. We'll put the places that you can engage at the end of this podcast. But for now, I want to talk about first. So I think one of the big changes that everybody is going to have to be going through right now, and that's why I just want to get this question out of the way, is adjusting to online schooling.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, maybe by the time this spring rolls around, that'll be a little bit different. But I think part of me suspects that online schooling might just be a more popular choice now for a lot of people. So how did you make that adjustment to online schooling?
Yeah.
And what recommendations would you have for people?
Well, I think the hardest thing for me, especially as the semester progressed, was getting the motivation to get out of bed and open my computer and tune in, right? So I love school to begin with, so I can't imagine what it's like for the person that doesn't like school and is just kind of checking a box. But the motivation was the biggest challenge for me and the biggest adjustment to make. And I think that's because, you know, when you have class in person, you have to, at least especially for commuters, you have to get up, you have to cut out time in your day to get up, to shower, to do all those things before you drive to campus. And if you're not there, you miss points and whatnot. So I really struggled to cut out time to get up and go through some sort of routine. So I really think being intentional about those things has been the biggest struggle, but also the thing that I focus the most on is saying, all right, you got to do it, and you got to be like present during this, because if you don't, you're going to probably fall behind. And that's coming from me, and I actually enjoy school. So I imagine that's, you know, magnified for folks that don't like it. What has your experience been with that? Because I know you you transferred too. Does that, what did that look like from UC to OSU? Because you did what, part of that semester online at UC too, right?
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, I like kind of checked out.
I'm sure. I did too.
Semester. That was, you know, and I feel like the online infrastructure wasn't really, because none of those classes were supposed to be online. I don't think it was fleshed out fully yet. So I feel like they were kind of giving us a easy, like they were just like giving it was easier. Like I felt like I didn't have to pay as much attention, and most things weren't very like, it didn't really feel much different. I was just kind of signing on, doing an assignment, getting off. But when things started up at OSU after the transfer to this fall semester, it was like the first week was a huge adjustment. Literally the first thing I did was miss like a quiz assignment, which luckily is like they get dropped. But like I had to figure out like, you know, where you're supposed to go, and I feel like every teacher does it differently because they have their own, I don't know, they have their own way of interpreting where to put things, where you should be looking. Like I was looking at like the to-do section in Carmen Canvas or whatever it's called, and that was just not the play because like things don't show up there all the time. So like, I don't know. For me, it was like, it was partially like I needed to like be more organized, because like normally I rely on just being present and soaking things up as I'm in an environment. Right. But like, again, like you said, intentional is the key word, I think, when you're doing online school. It's like you have a new power that comes with being able to access to school anywhere at any time, but with power comes the responsibility of needing to like set things out you have to be more organized, even if you're like me and I'm like more of a go by the flow person. Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like for me, it was also just like being mindful of
what I was thinking and feeling, like realizing that I wasn't motivated and realizing that I wasn't enjoying this as much as being in person and all of those things. Because there, I've gone through the motions and not realized what I'm what I'm thinking or feeling, and then weeks pass by and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this just happened. So yeah, I think being mindful of it too, so you can so you can be intentional about that stuff. And I also think it's crazy, like I haven't paid a lick of attention like the past probably 5 6 weeks. Like I haven't done a single thing. Like I'm just turning stuff in, like not learning a thing, whatever. And I like my grades are better than they usually are, which I don't know if that's like an indictment upon higher ed.
The advice we're giving listeners is don't pay attention or really care about school too much, is what we're saying.
Right, because you will end up with a 4.0 if you...
You will succeed if you care less about education. This is the message we want you to take away.
Yes, if you fall asleep during all of your 8 a.m.s, you will pass all of your classes with flying colors. I'm Cam Justice, and I approve this message.
Yeah, I feel like we're kidding. That was sarcasm.
Joke.
I don't know who might take that seriously.
Super joke.
Yeah, I think my final recommendation for online school, besides just being intentional, build a schedule, honestly go through at the beginning of the week and look at everything you have to do on all classes, and then build a plan. But with that said, I would say get outside as much as you can.
Oh my God, yeah.
That helped me. Like I can't stare at a screen for that long. Literally, I spend all day looking at a screen. Like I spend more time looking at a screen than not easily.
Right.
So it's like I needed like an hour every day to like get out, go outside and like exercise or something like that. It helps a ton mentally. So that would be my other recommendation. Also, maybe like do your online work somewhere outside of your house. Because like that was hard for me because I have a really nice setup here to do online work and I was pretty efficient at it. But eventually I would just like start to get like cabin fever. So,
yeah. Yeah. And like, that's another thing. Like this stuff works for us. Like some of these things work for us, but they may not work for you. And that's okay. Find whatever the heck that is. Like be okay with trying and failing and being like, oh, this made no sense. This didn't work for me. This is more challenging than not doing anything. And go from there. And we're all trying to figure this stuff out. I have to come up with a plan for next semester because the lack of attention that I paid, I mean, it was just through the roof. So figuring that stuff out for yourself.
The sheer lack of attention that you paid is mind-boggling. Yeah, I would say honestly that's probably a disclaimer for everything on college years. It's like you need to do a lot of trial and error to figure out what works for you. Because college, I mean, just in life, but in adulthood, everything is going to be different for when you're independent. Because now you're relying entirely on your own ability to do stuff. So I feel like everything we talk about is advice that works for us probably, but and it probably may work for you, but like you should definitely do trial and error and figure out what works for you. Because
right, and for me, like I don't know about you, but college was the first real trial and error period for me. Like everything else is so sheltered, comparatively speaking. Like you live in your own house, and so many things are quote unquote normal. And then you leave for college, and things change, and that's your first chance to do things on your own and figure out what works for you and only you. And for me, college was the first chance to really try things and say, oh yeah, that wasn't gonna, that's not gonna work long term. So, I think it's a huge, this is like a huge transition and adjustment period, but figuring what works for you out. That was a poor sentence. Figuring out what works for you is huge.
Yeah. I'd say for me, like, I felt pretty independent. My parents made like a really big deal out of like making sure I was independent, like here in high school. I think for the reason of just like, they didn't want me to struggle when I went to college. And I appreciate it because college was a really easy transition in terms of independence. Like I didn't feel much different from like my life before that. I hadn't actually talked to my parents in like years. They were like so.
Well, I think that's kind of interesting because like our experiences are so not ours, but everybody's experiences are so vastly different. Like Zarek was telling me in high school, like his parents were waking him up in the morning. Like
Yeah,
he go back and listen to the first episode. He said that out loud.
my mom said, she's like, this in elementary school, she was like, I'm not gonna wake you up, like get up when you need to get up. And she'd like, she'd yell up and be like, it's time to get up if I'm gonna be late. But
Right.
like, but by the time high school rolls around, like if I don't get up, I'm just gonna miss school.
Right.
Like it was my responsibility 100%. So yeah, by the time I made it to college, like it wasn't that much of a shock, like being on my own.
Yeah.
You know, once again, I hadn't even seen my parents. They just kind of threw me the wolves.
Yeah, you're a rogue warrior out here. Good for you.
Yeah, they left me with the house, and they were like, "We're gonna check out." So
yeah, that also. Yeah, like that's odd too, because like we're similar but different. Like I didn't, my mom was never like, hey, it's time to get up. Mostly because she was like at work by the time I would get up, or something.
Yeah, that's another thing too.
Like,
they had to be out of the house. So like,
right. They're like, I can't deal with you, you little baby boy. Like you got to do your thing. So,
she's like making
you gotta wake up, man.
Well, baby can't wake up for school.
That's kind of what it was like.
It's actually bullying.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it seems like this discussion has shifted towards independence and like being on your own, which I don't know if we've talked about that in previous episodes. But one of the big independent situations you might find yourself in is getting a job and balancing school, which is something I personally haven't had to do yet. My job was in the summer when I wasn't taking any classes, but I'm planning to do that this semester. So I would appreciate advice, which I've already talked to you many times about.
Right.
This. But either way, we would all, as listeners and myself, we would appreciate advice on what the challenges were of like first trying to balance a job and being a student full time, and what worked for you. How did you eventually figure that out? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just I should start by saying I'm extremely grateful for Youth to Youth. I know that sounds like I got paid to say that, but it's really the truth. I think the biggest thing that a lot of my peers have experienced, and I've certainly experienced, is this feeling that there's like not enough time in the day. like I think from the time even before you graduate high school, there's a certain point you hit where you've got enough going on where you don't feel like there's enough time in the day, and you perpetually feel exhausted. Like there's no not tired. There's no I feel rested. I've never said that. So I think finding time in the day is huge to carve out whatever time you need, whether it's school, self-care time, work time, whatever it is. And the biggest saving grace for me with that has been how flexible my job has been. And so like I've had one job my entire college experience, with the exception of my first year because I didn't have a job during that. But I've had this one job every year that I've been at Ohio State, and it's just been super flexible. I think from the time I was getting interviewed, it was like school comes first. You get school stuff done. You don't have to ever skip classes, things like that. And I think that's a huge difference, between a job that I have and a lot of other people that, quite frankly, aren't fortunate enough to have a job that is that flexible. It's again, I'm really fortunate to have that, and so I think the biggest thing with the balance is having a group of people or a schedule or something that is flexible and allows you to get done what you need to get done, whether that school or work. So that's the biggest thing for me, and everything else just kind of fell into place. Having that flexibility really just gave me the opportunity to be involved in other things. So yeah, I don't know. And if you're looking for a job, I think that's the biggest thing is like, can you be flexible for me so that I can help you out in the long run?
Okay. So you think that like the biggest priority when searching for a job should be finding flexibility. So
yeah. certainly to some extent. Like Alani and I talked last time about actually enjoying your job too, which is huge.
Mhm.
I think that that's big because if you go to school and you like are like okay, like school's school, and then you go to work and like work's work, and you're busy all the time, it leaves a lot less time for yourself where you're enjoying the things you're doing. So I think a combination of enjoying it and having some sort of balance already built in, um, you know, helps. Because I think there are a lot of jobs too that don't create that balance and you have to do it for yourself, right? But I think having that balance built in is nice with youth to youth specifically, and just having people around you that, kind of get it,
Right.
they've had plenty of college students work for them in the past, so they've kind of been accustomed to dealing with that, I guess, and so I think that helps. But I don't know.
For sure.
It's helpful to have that.
I I that's one of the main reasons that like I was gonna at one point during the summer I was thinking about continue. I was working at Amazon over the summer and I was thinking about continuing that into the school year. And I was like, I'm sure I can figure out a schedule where I wake up at 4 in the morning to go to Amazon, and then I sleep for a bit, and then I wake up and do class and just repeat. But yeah, I just decided not to because I was like, that's not. I basically to what you were saying, which is like flexibility. Like I knew that there was going to be zero flexibility in that schedule because Amazon is like, as an they don't have that same level of like they're willing to negotiate your hours because everyone's just kind of a cog in the machine,
Right.
but B, that they have like the employers themselves have experience employing college students, so they know, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So like, I guess yeah, I guess if I could make any recommendation, if you're trying to work and do school, like try to. I know a lot of people get jobs like at school, like like a lot of people like work at like the front desk in their dorm or something like
Yeah.
that, which I've heard mixed opinions about. But yeah, I would definitely like. I agree. I think you should try to prioritize jobs that are going to allow you some more flexibility, even if they might not pay quite as much.
Right. Right.
So my next question is: did that influence the way that you scheduled your classes? Because technically, you have control over that too, to an extent. So did you start like how many credit hours did you start taking when um, once you started working? Because I know that you love college so much that you've decided to stay for way longer than you're supposed to.
I know. I did what they call a victory lap. So yeah, I love college so much. I only have Ohio State shirts. I only wear scarlet and gray. Yeah, I loved it a ton. But to answer your question, I started off with 14 credit hours. I've pretty much fluctuated solidly between 14 and 16 my entire time at Ohio State. And I really, when you go into like the schedule builder thing, it gives you the option to like block off certain times. And really, the only thing that I blocked off was YAB on Wednesday nights. And from like, 2 to 8, so that I had time to come in, get whatever I needed done for the evening done, and then work through the rest of through the night. So I blocked those things off, and so in that way, I guess it kind of affected my scheduling. But outside of that, like I was able to schedule and then come to Kevin and say, "Here's my semester schedule. Let's do my work schedule around that," which is nice. And again, really the only thing that I blocked out was YAB time, just because it was a huge chunk of hours. I could prep for YAB and then be done at 8 o'clock, and that's at least 6+ hours of work time, and that's like a third of what I worked. I work 15 to 20 hours a week, so that was a third of my time right there, and then I just kind of plugged in wherever I could.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that I think in addition to looking for flexibility in your work, I think also trying to be as flexible as possible in your school, because you have control to an extent over both of them, and I think it's best when like one can give a little bit depending on the situation. Because
For sure, and I think too, something that I don't know when I realized this, but I think at some point I came to the conclusion that if you have a certain relationship with whoever your boss supervisor is, that they'll give a little bit just because they know kind of what you bring to the table and how valuable you are to a team. They're more likely to help out. And if you have a certain relationship with them to where you can be candid and say, hey, I have to get, this I can't change, right? This class only happens during this time of the day, during this, whatever. Having that relationship where you can be candid and say, I got to do this. They're more likely to give than I think I realized originally. And I think Kevin and I have a good enough working relationship where I can be like, yeah, this has to happen. So that's another thing too. Like, people are people. Hopefully they'll give, unless you're at Amazon, of course, because that's
I tried that with Jeff, and he did not. He was not responsive.
Mr. Bezos himself.
Bezos was not. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. He's the richest guy ever, and you know him.
I know him personally. Yes.
That's a claim.
And since I've left, his entire, honestly, he's losing money now because I'm not there. Like, the whole production value of Amazon is just absolutely plummeted.
Yeah, Zuckerberg is taking over now for him. Right. So
the stocks, which is something I know a lot about, they're not doing great. They are not doing great.
Yeah, I saw that actually this morning when I was checking stocks.
Yep. I was like, got my cup of joe and my newspaper, I guess, and I was like, oh, the stocks are down.
Well, I thought to myself, I was like, I'm going to bring this up on the podcast because Aidan needs to know his value at Amazon. So
right.
You're welcome.
Hey, it's okay. Stocks will go up just like stocks do. I know that.
Buy low, sell high, baby.
That's true. Supply and demand. It's all about supply and demand.
For sure.
Supply, like, there's curves in there.
I guess. I think that sounds like a thing. And who knew this would be the economics podcast? It doesn't flow as well, but it's a thing.
Yes, here's the thing. We were talking about jobs, but here's the thing. You don't even need a job because you can make thousands of dollars from the comfort of your home right now with these simple tricks.
God, subscribe. If you want more tips, if you want part 2, subscribe down in the bottom corner there. Leave us a like, all of those things.
Exactly.
We're really good at this.
We are. We're insane.
We could do a pyramid scheme if we wanted to.
I was literally going to say that. I was like, all you guys have to do
all right.
Sell a few of these so I can get my money, okay?
So how this works
and then get your money, I promise.
How this works is you're at the center here, and you have to sell this much to make it out here.
Right. But it's like a triangle, but 3-dimensional, sort of.
Right. We like to turn it on its side. You're in the center. You're not at the top. You're in the center, okay? And you can only work your way out. We don't do up and down the chain, okay? It's not a pyramid. Anyway.
All right, what do you think of the idea, Mark Cuban? What do you think? Are you willing to invest?
We want $100,000 at 20%.
Have you seen the video of the guy on Shark Tank who pitches a pyramid scheme to Cuban and all?
No, that's amazing. Did they tear it apart?
So funny. Yeah, they're just watching. They're like, dude, you're pitching us a pyramid scheme.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, highly recommend that. I'll send that to you after this. Okay, we need to get back on topic.
Okay.
That was a long tangent. Sorry.
It's all right.
Okay, so in addition to balancing school and a job, you are the peak of off-campus involvement and building a dope resume. So explain how you do all of those things.
I was wondering what you were about to say. I'm like, just tell you things. God, dude, that's
How do you do it?
I guess really it's changed over the past couple months. It's fluctuated quite a bit, and I think that's kind of a microcosm for college generally. So many things change and look vastly different over your entire experience, whether it's socially or academically or anything, extracurricularly, is that a word? I'm going to use it. I think it changes so much and ebbs and flows. And sometimes you're involved in a ton of things, and other times you're involved in hardly anything other than school and work. And, for me, I think a lot of external things had to happen for me to be involved in a lot of the things that I'm currently involved in. And, I think it's going to take more than one podcast episode to talk about all those things. But in the past couple months, it's really with policy things that have been going on and the racial reckoning we're going through in this country and all of the things that have happened in 2020, I think it's forced me to take a look at myself and say, what are you doing outside of school and work to have a positive impact on the people around you? And it made me say, can I do more? And if so, why am I not doing more? And that sort of forced me to, force is the wrong word for that, but it's allowed me to say, all right, where are the places you have connections? How can you leverage those connections to make some sort of change? And I think we get caught up in, like, especially during our 4, or in my case 5 years on a college campus, get caught up in, like, the only change I can make is on campus, because when I'm applying to grad schools or when I'm, filling out my resume, this looks good to say I was involved on campus. And that's great. Like, those things are important. I'm certainly not discounting those things. But there's also an entire world outside of your campus. And I don't know if I fully realized that until probably last year. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not involved in anything on campus. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. And that's when I sort of I applied for this position that was like the student board of trustee position. And so there's like one undergrad student. And I was like, this is going to be my thing. This is going to be the way that I change Ohio State for the better. And then I didn't get the position, and I was like, wait, I need to like reevaluate.
Went home and tore up all of your Ohio State merch.
Exactly. That was kind of the thing. I would like reevaluated and said, what are other places that I can make that change? And so I don't know. It took a lot, and it changed kind of the way it looked, but that's kind of my thing. And I don't know if you're like, are you struggling to get into that because you've transferred, so you're in a completely new space, and 2, everything you've known since then has not been in person? Is that like something you're struggling with? And have you, like, I don't know, have you navigated that at all, or what does that look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, right. So, like, you talked about like not having any time. And for me, that was like senior year. I had internships. I had all of this stuff going on, and I was
the
like
face of Youth to Youth.
And I was I was Youth to Youth.
You were the poster child.
And still, there hasn't really been anything like that. We haven't seen quite that level.
Nope. Suck it, Tanner. If you're watching this.
Yes, I agree. I hate Tanner. No, I'm just kidding. We love you, Tanner. I was like, that was like the peak of my like feeling that way, and I loved it. Like, I was like, that's like my state of like enjoying my life, is when I don't have any time to think about what I could be doing.
Yeah.
And the last like, but the thing is like, it was easy. Like, there were just kind of things coming into my life, and I was like, because people are just like tossing opportunities to you, and you just have to take them. And that's like what I'm good at, is like, I'm good at like seeing an opportunity and then taking it most of the time.
Yeah.
But right now it's like they're not, no one's throwing opportunities to you right now. Like it's time to start like, you have to be more than opportunistic. You have to start like creating those opportunities in a lot of ways, which is something that I'm not skilled at, and it's showing because I don't have a whole lot to do right now. So yeah, lately it's been pretty low key. Also, I'm trying, like, I have a responsibility of like, I live in the house with my family, so they don't want me going to campus and like being around a lot of people, because getting COVID here would be like pretty devastating, because my mom wouldn't be able to work. She's a teacher, and that could like cause a lot of issues. So there's that. Lulu's come to join, my dog. As I was saying, getting involved has been really, really difficult right now. And part of me is I'm just kind of waiting it out. I have things that I want to do. And like my plan is like once I can go back in person, because also I don't like doing like Zoom stuff. I've done it before and I literally hated it. Like I was like, I hate this. So for me, it's almost not worth getting involved in things that don't feel like we're doing anything. It feels like you're just meeting for the sake of meeting a lot of the time. Like they're just trying to keep something going so that when they can start up again, we can actually do something. And I'm like, that's just not for me. I can be filling my time with something, you know what I mean? So, but I picked up a lot of new hobbies, which will segue into my next question pretty well. But I picked up new things. Like I bike a lot. I do get a lot of exercise now, which is being in an exercise routine is something that I was unable to do for my entire life.
Yeah.
But now I get pretty consistent exercise and I feel like way better, which has helped a ton with doing online school. Like,
Yeah.
because I just feel energized all the time, which is like, and I know that exercise, I'm not saying like everybody should, I mean, you all should get exercise as recommended by doctors, but like, I understand that like just find one that's something that you enjoy doing. Because for me, it's riding. Like I just like riding a bike. It's like feels like I went somewhere. Honestly, is why I do it. Because like when you're stuck inside. So yeah, but that segues into my next question, which is how much. And this was sort of touched on in the last podcast episode with Alani, and I felt like I wanted to expand on it a bit. And she was talking about how much you can change as a person in college, because a lot of people feel like when you go to college you can just totally rebrand. And it seemed like you guys were saying that that's not really true 100%. Like a lot of people go to college and are still in a lot of ways the same as what they were before. Like they don't just become a different person. So my question is, how much do you think you can change as a person in college? Do you think it's common to find a lot of new interests and hobbies when you go? And also, do you think it's important to go in with good habits, or do you think you can like build better habits once you're there?
Ooh, these are good questions. I think first to answer your question about how much a person can change, I do agree with Lonnie in the sense that there are certain things that, I don't want to say follows you because that feels ominous, but, there are certain things that you're known for and specifically if you stay within your community or you go to a school where a lot of people from high school and from your hometown went, a lot of those things are going to kind of carry over. But for the most part, you can sort of shape how much that impacts your experience. You can completely form entirely different friend groups and never interact with those folks if you don't want to, and completely make a new name for yourself. And so in that way, I think a person can change as much as they want to. And I think that's really cool because you can kind of take the things that you want to work on and work on those and leave the things that you love or whatever, or that you're great at, and kind of combine the best things and ultimately grow and develop in a way that's, for the better in the long term. So like, I think I think you can change a ton, and it's really just dependent on how much you want to, or, and even like how much the people around you to some extent let you. I think once you form a certain group of people, you grow and develop in a certain way based on who you're around and what your goals are and things like that. So I also think it's fairly dependent on what circles you're in at some point. Once you've decided that for yourself, and again, that's your choice to some extent. But once you've kind of decided those things, I think that also plays a role. So I think you can change to some degree, a fair amount. Yeah. So that's the first. What were the other questions? I got lost in that. In a good.
Yeah, that was a lot at once. So is it common to find new interests and hobbies? And then do you think it's important? Like, should people, for some of the listeners who are going into college right now, or like, senior year and junior year, do you think they should be like working on building really good habits right now? Or do you think that college will kind of like whip you into shape and like build those habits for you, I guess?
Yeah, I think
maybe a mixture of both. Maybe it depends.
Right. I think a little bit of both for the habit stuff, because I'm still working on my habits. And I think that's something that always changes, I guess. I think I have had to adapt and say, all right, this worked during my first couple years. We're in a completely different situation now, obviously with COVID, and we're, as you go along, courses get harder and you're asked to do more in a work setting and things like that. So those things change, and your habits, I feel like, have to change along with that. And I don't know if you've kind of experienced that same, like, needing to adapt your habits to the situation you're in. But that's kind of been it for me. Is I think it's important to build those habits now, of course, because if you don't have some sort of foundation, it's a lot more challenging to build that up. But I definitely think you can build them as you're kind of going through it. And depending on what you're doing, it may be challenging to kind of do those in the moment and build those habits in the moment, because if you're being asked to do a zillion things, habits may not be the easiest thing to form. But I think it's definitely possible to do that, I guess, in the moment, if you will. So then in terms of hobbies, I think it's really normal to learn a ton about yourself during your first year, your first semester, because to your point, like, you're on your own in a very different way, and you may be independent of your parents while you're in high school, but when you're on your own, in your own space, taking care of your own things, problem solving in a different way, you start to learn a lot about yourself and your interests, and you're around people that look different, and have different experiences. So you have a chance to really kind of dive into those in a different way. And again, environment plays a huge role in that. Not being in Dublin my first year, I was able to learn a ton about myself. So I think it is very normal to have new hobbies and learn a bunch about yourself. So I don't know, and that's just me. And don't feel bad if you don't learn a bunch about yourself your first year, or don't pick up a bunch of new hobbies or anything like that. I just think it's kind of on a case by case basis, but I think it's normal.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I'd be surprised if you didn't learn anything about yourself in the
Right.
first year. For me, it came in the places that I wasn't expecting it, in a way that I wasn't expecting it to. Because, like, a lot of people are like, you're going to be on your own for the first time. It's going to be so much different. And I showed up and I was like, this isn't really that much different. I wake myself up. When I was at home, my parents were gone at work most of the time. So, like, I feel this feels pretty much normal. Like,
Right.
I don't really know. But then, global pandemic happened. And I was like, well, see, this is new. This is different. This was not the same. And I learned a lot about myself in the way that I've had to, like, deal with that, I guess. Just being more like, I don't know. I feel like I'm a lot tougher, a lot stronger emotionally from it. You know what I mean?
That's so true.
Like, now it's like plans get ruined, and I'm like, there'll always be the next one.
Right. Such is life, man.
Which maybe that I'm worried that, like, that'll just be like it's gonna go back to normal, and I'll go right back to being, like, taking everything for granted, being spoiled. I guess we'll have to see. But I think in general, I've just matured a lot from also, age. That helps too. But, like, this is also a pretty crazy experience to be a young person through.
For sure.
And also, I'm just, like, always counting my blessings that I wasn't in high school when this happened. Because, like, I have to, like, I feel so bad for everyone who's doing this. Because a lot of people are like, oh, my first year of college got ruined. I'm like, I think it would have been so much worse if it was your high school experience that got.
For sure.
Because, like, college still gonna happen.
Well, and I think that, like, to that point, like, all of these seniors right now are having to, like, grow up in a way that a lot of high schoolers have never had to do. They've had to, like, kind of take their lumps and say, well, it is what it is. Like, I'm doing this for the greater good. And that's a very mature thing to do, to not be, like, really upset about it and to not complain about it. Like, all of the young people I've talked to are just like, this is, like, a part of the process. Like, yeah, it sucks, but this is kind of the hand we've been dealt. And that's that's a level of maturity that no other group of young people have ever had to do,
Yeah. And honestly, a lot of them aren't now. Like, when I look, like, I follow a lot of high schoolers on Instagram, and they're all still, like, hanging out with friends and posting, pictures and no masks on and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm not that mad. I mean, I'm, like, a little disappointed, but I'm kind of like, I mean, that's such a hard ask of somebody
Right.
who did. So for those of you who are being really responsible, I think it'll pay off just in how much easier you're going to be able to deal with the world when that's responsibility is a necessity. Meanwhile, some of your peers might be struggling. So yeah, honestly, like me, I feel like for you guys, college might be the easiest adjustment to college for a lot of people because you're already getting online classes down, like the rhythm. Um, Probably more independent. You're teaching yourself a lot of things already. Like I know talking to my sister, she feels like she's learning everything on her own, and
Mm-hmm.
like in high school, and I'm like, it's kind of what college is like a lot of the time. Like you're emailing professors, figuring things out. So it's like if it's any consolation for any of this, I feel like you might have an easy adjustment. It might be like easier adjusting than it would have been. But I'm not sure. Maybe I don't know. It's kind of hard to say, but I
Well,
feel like there's some things you'll be better
for sure, there's some things, and it's all a give and take. Like there are going to be some things that that all of us, as we go through life, having dealt with this situation, that we're going to be way better at, and there are going to be things that we struggle with more because the past year of our lives have been so vastly different. There are some. I imagine there are going to be some things that young people struggle with that had this not happened, we would have never had to deal with in the same way, or to the same extent. So, it's all a give and take, and I think the perspective that young people have gained through this is like inspiring for me because I'm like, why am I complaining about X, Y, and Z when there are young people that are going through this and are navigating it and not complaining about it, and so I guess props to them in that way.
there's one topic I wanted to work in because I think you specifically have such a good perspective on it, and it's like it goes back to resume building,
Mm.
specifically networking. So if you want to do like, I want to hear like what your strategies are for being good at networking and also your perspective explaining why that's important to everyone who's listening, why you think networking is a really crucial skill because
Yeah.
um, I've recognized it as a crucial skill, but I'm not nearly as good at it. So, um, what's your secret? How do you do it?
Yeah. For me, and I've mentioned this, if you know me, I talk quite a bit about connections and things like that and how important those are. And I think what it comes down to, at least for me, and what it has been so far, has been showing people that you are willing to treat them in a way that shows them that they matter. I think is huge. And when you like buy into what someone is saying, in an ecstatic way, like you're like, oh yeah, I agree with that, blah blah blah, whatever, we can work on this, I can use your skill set and you can use mine as a way to make some sort of change, right, has been the way that I've sort of navigated it. And for me, networking in school and networking outside of school has been huge, just because you never know, and this is going to sound so cliche, but it's so true, you never know what interactions you're going to have with people, and then later down the line you're going to run into them and you need them for something, or like I said, you're asking a favor of them, or you're working together on something. We
So
did
what you're saying is only be nice to people if you can get something from them later.
exactly no, but there's actually an interesting story about this that this guy told. He's like some executive. He does some, I don't know what his title is, but he works over at Abercrombie, and he dresses in plain clothes all the time, like he's pretty dressed down most of the time, and he pulls into his parking spot at work, and this guy, like, he opened his door and hit the guy in the car next to him. He hit his door, and the guy like flipped out and like lost his mind and like yelled at him and said all these things. They go inside, and he's the guy that hit. Sorry, I'm botching this. Essentially, they're interacting, and the guy that flipped out is now being interviewed by the guy that he flipped out on. And so he's
Right.
like, "You're not a nice person, and I'm
This is
not going to hire you for this position." And
this is the story you'd see on Facebook, I feel like.
right, and that's a really extreme example. And whether he was telling the truth about that story or not, here we are, and now I'm telling it. But like that, and again, that's very extreme. But there are there are small things like that. Or for example, like I'm doing this Chiefs Advisory Committee thing with the Dublin police chief in the Dublin Police Department, and another committee member I've known since I was a sophomore in high school, and now we're working together on this committee. If that interaction had gone poorly, I imagine our interactions now would be probably strained, or he wouldn't feel as confident in me and making decisions and things like that. So I really think it's huge to, if for nothing else, connect with people and network with them so that you have a good impression of you out there. And again, I think it all comes back to how you make people feel, right?
And you should just be doing that with everybody you meet.
Right, right.
Right.
Because it's again, you never know, and if for no other reason than people are deserving of positive experiences, right, and having positive regard for one another, it could benefit you in the long run to be exceptionally good to people. So.
And I have a similar story where like I met this kid and I really didn't like him, but I was nice to him, and then he later down the road he was like, "Do you want to host a podcast?"
Right.
And I was like,
I was just thinking, I was like, this kid is great, and he made me feel good about myself, so I'm going to bring him on the podcast.
"Yep, that was all a lie. It was just to get this opportunity.
Yeah, and I hate you.
This opportunity right here is going to revolutionize my life."
Just saying, networking, it gets you far. It's not about who you know, it's about who knows you, man.
Networking might get you back with the thing you did in high school.
That's how the saying goes.
All right, anyways, yes, continue, sorry.
No, I mean, I think that's been the key for me, is just, and to your point,
Nice person.
huh?
Just be a nice person.
Right, just be a good person, and kind of the rest kind of falls into place, believe it or not. That sounds a little trite, but it's the truth. And
I think the key is like, it's not even like the nice person part, because I think there are a lot of nice people out there who just like don't have don't save the energy to give to every single person that they meet. And you're one of the people who can do that. And I think everyone can do that. It's like, but it's a skill you have to train to, like, every time you meet somebody, be like, especially for people who just like socially are like
meh.
less on top of it all the time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I agree. It's like
it's something that I had to get a lot better at. I'm still not great at it, but like, there was a time when like I just couldn't give that. Like I didn't hate people, but people would come away thinking that I did, because I just didn't have the energy to like, or I wasn't giving the energy. You know what I mean?
right.
Because that energy was going towards something else really important, I'm sure, or maybe just being anxious. I have no idea, but like, it is just like you have to train that skill that every time you meet somebody, you're like in the mindset of like you're going to give them everything that you have, and you're going to be present with that person, because I feel like that's all people really want from an interaction, is just to feel like you were with them fully and giving everything that you had to that. Yeah.
And that's another thing too. To that point about being present, I think another huge key is just being yourself. Like, people can see through the like fake, oh, I'm just doing this so that we can, I can get an opportunity out of this. They can see through that so easily. But again, if you're present and you make them feel heard and you make them feel whatever, validated, all of those things, it'll benefit you so much more in the long run. So like that's what I've done, and that's what's worked for me, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, yeah, that's information that I need personally, so that when the world goes back to normal, I can start building those connections myself, start doing that networking. I guess we'll finish then on your suggestion, which was there was one thing that you wish you knew coming into all of this. What would that thing be?
Yeah. Whew, I think the one thing I wish I knew going into college that probably would have shaped my experience for the better is just understanding what you can and can't give, right? That plays into the time management, the work life balance, the school life balance, understanding that it's okay to, okay to say no and things like that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, is it like difficult with all this
I'm
off-campus
so
stuff?
bad at it. I'm so
Deciding what
awful
to
at
say
it.
and not to do, yeah.
So bad at it, but I'm again mindful of it and trying to work towards it. But I think knowing how much you can give to a certain thing, right? Um, a certain thing individually, not even just like how much you can give to all of the things. My biggest thing is how much can I give to one particular project, one particular initiative, right? And again, I'm still learning that. I'm still navigating that, and I don't know if that ever stops because again, your responsibilities ebb and flow and become more challenging or less challenging. So that would be the biggest thing for me is try and figure out what you can give to something, and once you figure that out, that'll free you up, literally and metaphorically, just kind of free you up to a whole bunch of things. So that's my biggest thing I wish I knew. What's yours?
Uh,
What's yours?
yours. I man, I wish I'd known about pandemic prior. That would have been nice to know about. Get ready for that. I don't know. Honestly, it's been such a crazy. I guess I would say be ready to like just learn to be more like intentional and less like I'm trying to think of a word that describes like I don't know, not like lackadaisical about things, but like just like be more intentional about what you're doing. Like have more of a plan.
Yeah.
Um, or at least not even have a plan, but like because here's the thing, like I had a pretty strict plan about how I was going to do things when I went in. Like, okay, I'm going to graduate in 3 years. I'm going to, and here's all the, I'm going to have things ready this summer. I guess like you want to be more intentional about the way that you structure your days and, the way you live life day to day, but be less intentional about your future would be I think I had it flipped of that. Like I was really intentional. I had to plan things that were nowhere near happening yet. And I wasn't planning my day to day at all.
Yeah.
And like so then each day would come in and it was just kind of and I wouldn't be productive all the time, and then I'd be looking forward to things where I would be productive, and then those things never came because of
Right.
situations.
Yeah.
So like in that sense, I would like try to think more day to day, less big picture sometimes, because the bottom line is if you're doing things well in your day to day, if you're constantly giving everybody you meet energy, if you're planning things out, if you're being physically and emotionally healthy, your big picture is going to become better because you're taking opportunities in the moment. So like if you can restructure the way that you live on a daily basis, I think your big picture will benefit without you having to really put too much thought towards that.
Right.
Yeah, that ended up more eloquent than it started actually. So I'm pretty.
Yeah. That was a solid ending.
So yeah, that would be my one thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's huge. And it's that's not always easy. Like that's a challenge to not focus on this like down the road thing.
I think that's the biggest issue with how people bring you into college and how they frame it.
Yeah.
Is like, and high school. That's the other thing. Is like the moment you hop on a high school, you're big picturing college. Like what college? How are you preparing? And I feel like people do that now. They're like grad school. Like all of my friends talking about grad school their freshman year, and they were like, "What's your plan for grad school?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm just gonna like get done with undergrad school first,
Right.
or
Right.
at least get close. Like I'm not gonna get, but I don't even know. I haven't had any of these experiences yet that are going to shape what my feelings on that are. Like, what if I don't even like my major or my school? It turns out I didn't. So like, it's the thing is like, it's not bad to think about the big picture, but what I was doing that's detrimental is not thinking about the little things that I'm doing every single, like, I feel like people get in a gear where that's all they think about is like, what are they doing for the future? And they start to compromise on things that you can be changing in your life, like day to day, like How are you managing your time? Are you giving energy to every person you meet? Finding time to get outside and get exercise and things like that. Yeah, so that'd be my recommendation. I promise you'll all be okay. Things will work out.
For sure.
Yeah, that's it for me. So I'm a fake host. I'm an imposter host. So I'm going to turn it over to Cam to tell you guys where they can engage, where can they continue to follow the College Years podcast and other youth related media and things.
For sure. Yeah. Well, if you enjoyed this video and enjoyed the College Year series so far, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Youth to Youth International on YouTube. Follow us on social media at Y2Y1982. That is the letter Y, the number 2, Y1982 on all of the social media. Go check us out. Tell us what you think. If there are topics that you want to discuss on future podcasts, let us know. DM us. And we'll try and work those in. So, Aidan, thanks for taking over. I appreciate you.
Thanks for coming on and being my guest.
Good. There were some gems in there.
There were some gems.